Bill Gates said what about vaccines? Now, you better watch this one right away. I'm telling you guys, I'm not sure how long they're going to let us keep this video up. Bill Gates just warned Australia and the world about the next pandemic, which it says here could be man-made and far more brutal than C-19. Let me repeat that, guys. Man-made and far more brutal than C-19 that took 1 million American lives. Like my friend said, calling the vaccine safe is like calling Bill Gates a humanitarian. So does that mean that the next pandemic could be coming from experimental vaccines that could be put into our arms? Your guess is as good as mine, guys. There's also these bombshell new emails that showed how Dr. Anthony Fauci was part of the US, NIH, and the WHO conspiracy to silence the Wuhan lab theory leak. Could this be connected to the NIH gain-of-function regulations being called vague and secretive by certain advisors? Yeah, we definitely have to find out on that one. This brings us to our big money finale. 4 side hustles for introverts. Some of these can bring in tens of thousands of dollars. Now, this was a request by popular demand. That means you guys in the comments, you've asked for this. So if you want to avoid people and all sorts of diseases that they bring with them, this is the list to watch. So make sure you guys stick around. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on this one. What do you think of what the government has been saying about the virus and those vaccines? My friends say safe and effective is not a lie. It's 2 lies. Do you guys agree? Drop me a comment down below. Also, if you own a home, make sure your home is protected. Get your free home warranty quote. There's a link in the description down below. Only takes about 15 seconds. Tech billionaire and Microsoft chairman Bill Gates, known for having predicted the C-19 pandemic, is now saying that we should prepare for the next pandemic, which could be man-made and far more brutal. Bill Gates told the Lowry Institute think tank in Sydney, Australia, that political leaders need to set aside their differences and work together to prepare for the next virus. Along with that, Bill Gates praised Australia's policies in helping to keep infection rates low before vaccines were rolled out. Now, the Microsoft founder turned philanthropist is saying that a stable international order based on mutual political will is needed to deal with the future pandemics. Yeah, like that's gonna happen, right? Now, according to Bill Gates, he said this, quote, "We need to be doing every 5 years a comprehensive exercise at both country and regional levels of pandemic preparedness. And you need a global group that's scoring everybody," end quote. I guess that's the cue for the WHO to be called in, perhaps the WEF, World Economic Forum. He even called for cooperation with China, saying, quote, "I see China's rise as a huge win for the world. The current mentality of the US to China, and which is reciprocated, is kind of a lose-lose mentality. That could be very self-fulfilling in a very negative way," end quote. Now, that's what Gates is saying, but let's see what he's really doing with his money. Well, aside from all of this philanthropic grandstanding, Bill Gates and other billionaires and millionaires, they're buying up US farmland. Here, check this out.
Bill Gates owns more land than all of the entire city of New York. Jeff Bezos' land is double the amount, clocking in at 420,000 acres. John Malone, the largest private landowner in America, owns 2.2 million acres all by himself, a landmass slightly smaller than the island of Puerto Rico. America is enormous. Yet 100 of the richest and largest private landowners in America own 1.86% of all the land available in the United States, the majority of their land being forests, ranches, and farmland.
Some people like myself find farms beautiful and peaceful and a nice place to live.
Land is only getting more valuable. In the mid-1990s, farmland was valued at less than $1,500 an acre, adjusted for inflation. By 2020, that number had grown to $3,160 an acre.
It's expensive. So if somebody is desiring land, it is primarily people of wealth who can afford it.
Institutional capital is growing and it's becoming a bigger piece of the market. It's about a $3 trillion asset class when you look at the whole US.
You know what I think? These rich entrepreneurs and investors, they're buying up some serious real estate and they're preparing their own safety bunkers for when hits the fan, if you know what I mean. When World War III breaks out between China, Russia, and the United States, the likes of Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Warren Buffett, they're going to be safe and sound in their self-sustaining farmland/nuclear bunker. But what do you guys think? Hit the like button if I'm making making sense for you guys. I mean, it's kind of hard to ignore when news like this comes out. Bombshell new email reveals Dr. Anthony Fauci was part of NIH and the WHO conspiracy to silence Wuhan lab leak theory. So here's the deal. Dr. Anthony Fauci, once considered America's top C19 doc, conspired with influential scientists around the world, including those at the World Health Organization, to silence concerns that SARS-CoV-2 may have leaked from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. That's according to new emails that just got leaked out. Now, apparently Fauci has misled Congress over the extent that the National Institutes of Health have funded the Wuhan lab as a subcontractor of EcoHealth Alliance. The Wuhan laboratory was also funded by the Pentagon, according to the contract awards that they found. These are some pretty high people in the email chain. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Disease chief, Sir Jeremy Farrar, a top scientist at the World Health Organization, Christian Anderson, a leading immunologist and microbiologist with Scripps Research, Professor Edward Holmes, a biologist at the University of Sydney, Dr. Francis Collins, former director of the National Institutes of Health, Chris Elias of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, George Fu Gao of the Chinese Center of Disease Control and Prevention, Victor J. Dezhou of Duke University, and various other influential scientists and philanthropists around the world. All of these supposed smart people conspired together to influence this one paper titled The Proximal Origin of SARS-CoV-2, published on March 17, 2021, so that instead of actually exploring the different possibilities of where the C19 virus actually came from, including the lab leak theory, they pushed the researchers to close the book on public inquiry into the possibility that SARS-CoV-2 had escaped from the Wuhan laboratory. Then Fauci and his gang went all out to call critics of the Wuhan laboratory conspiracy theorists, basically a way to shut people up. But behind the scenes, the authors themselves were taking the possibility that the virus escaped from a laboratory more seriously. Two of the paper's authors, Edward C. Holmes and Christian Anderson, had seriously entertained the lab side of the C19 origins investigation. But Dr. Francis Collins and Farrar nudged them away from the lab leak theory and toward the natural origins theory, including with information that they later proved to be just plain wrong. And here's what they came up with. Quote, "Our main work over the last couple of weeks has been focused on trying to disprove any type of lab theory, but we are at a crossroad where the scientific evidence is not conclusive enough to say that we have high confidence in any of the three main theories considered." End quote. Fauci, of course, replied, quote, "Thanks for the note. Nice job on the paper," end quote. This was after the final paper came out, basically forgetting about the lab leak possibility. David Relman, a professor of microbiology, immunology, and medicine at the Stanford University, he put it this way. The paper rested on, quote, "flawed assumptions and opinion, and it didn't properly address the possibility of a lab-associated origin of C19, which he believes is as plausible as the natural origin thesis." Dr. Anthony Fauci and other top scientists are expected to be called before the new GOP-led House of Representatives to account for misleading the public on C19. These newly unredacted NIH emails will provide more ammunition for critics of the United States government's C19 pandemic response. Now, it really goes to show how people who were just asking some questions about the vaccines and the virus were shunned and called conspiracy theorists by elitists like Fauci. Not to mention how many posts and outcries from the public were just tucked away and straight up banned on social media platforms. Many people found themselves in Facebook jail just for asking questions or speaking their own opinions. More suppression. Now, I know some of you guys can relate. Here's a story I got from one of you. I'm a Canadian who has been lucky enough to travel the world and live in many other countries, some of which were socialist and much more restrictive than my home country used to be. What struck me the most was how easily people walked themselves to a place where they turned on their neighbors, their friends, and family. It was very difficult to witness people I love being fired, coerced into things that they did not want to do, and suddenly treat their own family as villains. I used to be proud to be Canadian. Now, I have nothing but sadness for this country. Yeah, see how our government pits the American people against one another? Pretty sure you know at least one person that you probably don't necessarily have the same relationship now that you did before the pandemic, if you know what I mean. Can't make this stuff up, guys. Plus, there's also this secrecy about the C19 origin and their whole gain of function research, which some advisors call vague and secretive. The National Science Advisory Board of Biosecurity, they highlighted wide gaps in the overall oversight of controversial projects that create enhanced pandemic potential pathogens in preliminary recommendations to the NIH. Some really scary stuff that they said. Privately funded research that risks causing a pandemic occurs largely in the shadows. Meanwhile, NIH funded research with pandemic risks it's fallen through the cracks of the agency's vague internal processes. Definitely some shady stuff going on here, guys. Only 3 research projects have been referred for extra scrutiny by the committee in its 5-year lifespan, suggesting that the NIH is not referring enough projects for review. Just one example that they found: controversial experiment undertaken at the Wuhan Institute of Virology with an NIAID subgrant has generated concerns about whether controversial projects are slipping the agency's notice or receiving carve-outs. The experiment generated a SARS-like virus with 10,000 times its initial viral load, but was not subject to the proper oversight. NIH said that it was because the result was unexpected. The lapse in oversight has been criticized by members of Congress and biosecurity experts. NIH requested complete lab notes related to the experiment from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, but have been rebuffed. Now, another one: a privately funded lab voluntarily informed the CDC that it would generate a virus unlikely to arise in nature, a hybrid virus splicing together the original SARS virus and the SARS-CoV-2. Now, what's scary is that if the lab itself didn't bring it up on their own, the project would have proceeded under the radar of the US government. Basically, nobody would have known anything. So yeah, maybe this is the type of thing that they should be looking into at Congress instead of wasting people's time and American taxpayers over the endless debt ceiling standoff stuff. But what do you guys think? How about stopping immediately blowing any more money sending it over to the Ukraine? We need to focus on things that are really, really important. All I can say is make sure you have some gas in the tank and some supplies in your pantry. Never hurts to prepare, I always say, guys. In fact, I rounded up some pretty interesting side hustle ideas for you. They listed these for introverts, but really anybody could make it work. And the plus side, small to limited human interaction, but could still bring in tens of thousands of dollars. Among the most popular side hustles for 2023 are staffing events like conferences and tutoring in a subject matter where you have expertise. But these are all fairly social hustles. You'd have to interact with people if you took them on, even if only on a one-on-one basis for tutoring. But then again, you could do virtual tutoring, set up a Zoom call or something like that. But there are a lot of gigs that are out there that are suitable for those who want to stay safe and enjoy their time alone. Gig economy apps, for example, you got Uber and DoorDash. These are very well suited for that because you don't have a real boss. You're pretty much doing things on your own. First one, taking surveys. Now, if you've got a few spare minutes and you like sharing your opinions, consider taking surveys on sites like Survey Junkie and Inbox Dollars that pay cash or gift cards. You'll fill in some personal information that gives them a sense of your demographic and your geography, and then see options for different surveys that you can start taking pertaining to retail, food and beverage, tech and personal care products, and others. Most usually take around 20 minutes. Now, you're not going to make thousands of dollars a month doing this one, but reviewers, they're reporting making a couple of dollars per hour, but that can add up, and it works if you don't feel like thinking too hard about your hustle. It's kind of like easy money. Now, if you've got some spring cleaning to do, you could consider selling your clothing and apparel on sites like Poshmark, Mercari, OfferUp, and eBay. Now, if you have luxury items, you could also consider selling those on The RealReal. Pro tip: scope out the competition first. See how much items like the ones that you have are going for. Then start a page and post them yourself. Now, keep in mind the cost of shipping and shipping materials, as well as each of the site's fees. On Poshmark, for example, the fees for sales under $15 is $2.95, and the fee for sales above $15 is 20% of the selling price. So basically, you keep 80% of what you made. Now, if you have downtime and you want to make some cash on the weekend, it's probably the best time to start listing things. Now, one success story that I found, Casey Morwood, she opened up her Poshmark store in 2016, and she's made $30,000 altogether. She said here, quote, "It takes about 2 minutes to set it up. Then I'll go watch Netflix, work out, or do my actual daytime job," end quote. Now, if you have an eye for design, you could also sell printable items like calendars, print on demand. You can use tools like Canva or even Google Docs to create digital calendars, checklists, or holiday cards for people to buy on sites like Etsy and print on their own. Like with clothes, you should check out the sites and see the types of printables that other people are selling. That way you can get some ideas of what you can make and how much people are charging. It's also good to take note of those Etsy seller fees. It costs 20 cents to list an item, and there's a 6.5% transaction fee for each sale after that. Another success story, Rachel Jimenez, she started her Etsy store in 2019, and she's made nearly $160,000 on the site in 2021 just selling digital planners, Christmas scavenger hunts, and other items. When she was just starting out and making time for her hustle over lunch, she said this, quote, "I would spend 30 minutes eating, hanging out with with my coworkers, and then another 30 minutes working on my Etsy store, end quote. Then, if you're into writing, you can consider starting a Medium blog. They cover all sorts of topics ranging from parenting to neuroscience, and they offer 2 different ways to make money. One that's linked to how much time people spend reading your content, the other to referring members. You can refer readers to become Medium members and get half of their membership fee, net of standard payment processing fees, for as long as they remain a member. That's what I'm talking about, passive recurring income. Most writers make under $100 a month. Different blogs and media outlets also pay contributors for freelance pieces. Now, if there's an outlet that you follow regularly, you can check out on the site to see if there's any kind of opportunities to write something for them yourself. But I would love to hear some of you guys' side hustles. Let's help one another and share ideas in the comments. Now, of course, I'm always open to requests for future comments, all to help out our financial freedom fam, right? But there you go, guys. Definitely some major information in our pandemic update and daily news report. The pandemic endgame Bill Gates warned about, the shady backroom deals Fauci and his gang were up to during this whole pandemic, plus the side hustles that could net you some serious cash flow. Appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, definitely an even bigger thanks for lighting up the like button. We got some major videos lined up for you guys. Make sure you guys tune in. Please be kind to one another, and I'll see you in the next video.